An absolute disaster might be brewing inside the Philadelphia Eagles training facility, and the panic hiding behind closed doors could shatter their entire season before a single regular season game is even played. Imagine spending $100 million on a defensive monster, a player brought in specifically to terrorize opposing quarterbacks and lead a championship-contending pass rush, only to watch his body completely give out during a routine weightlifting session before training camp even officially opens. That is the nightmare reality facing Philadelphia right now. But what makes this situation truly terrifying isn't just the injury itself. Is the alarming, glaring contradiction coming from inside the organization. When the front office speaks, they smile, wave away the concerns, and promise everything is completely under control. Yet when the defensive coordinator steps up to the microphones, his face tells an entirely different story. He refuses to offer guarantees, drops heavy hints about an extended absence, and leaves the fan base staring straight into a terrifying abyss of uncertainty. Before we dive into the dark reality of how this disaster unfolds and what it means for the rest of the roster, smash that subscribe button if you want the fastest, rawest NFL updates on the planet. Let's pull back the curtain on how this whole crisis started. During the offseason, the front office realized their defense had a glaring weakness. Their pass rush lacked teeth. They managed a meager 42 sacks the previous year, a devastating drop-off for a franchise that once terrorized opponents with a monstrous 70 sacks. The solution demanded aggressive, high-stakes action. They worked out a trade with the Minnesota Vikings during the draft, sacrificing valuable third-round draft capital to secure a proven, battle-tested edge rusher. Immediately after acquiring him, they handed over a massive 4-year, $100 million contract with $50 million fully guaranteed. His average annual salary skyrocketed to nearly $24,750,000, making him the sixth highest-paid player on the entire roster. This player was never meant to be a depth piece or a rotational experiment. He was brought in to be the ultimate weapon, the primary foundation of the defensive scheme, and the direct replacement for a massive defensive departure who had just signed a mega deal elsewhere. He was Jonathan Greenid. All the chips were pushed into the center of the table. The blueprints for the defense were drawn up entirely around his unique skill set. And then, before he could even play a single snap in a midnight green uniform, disaster struck. During a simple, routine weightlifting session designed to build strength ahead of training camp, a pectoral muscle tore. Just like that, months of meticulous planning evaporated. Greenid's name immediately landed on the dreaded physically unable to perform list, better known as the PUP list. Panic instantly rippled through the fan base. But almost as quickly as the news broke, the front office stepped in to control the narrative. The general manager faced the media with absolute confidence, claiming the injury was minor, entirely manageable, and nothing to worry about long-term. He assured everyone that Greenid would be back on the field well before the season opener. Fans took a collective breath. They wanted to believe everything was fine. Then came the next day, and with it came a chilling dose of raw reality. The defensive coordinator, a man famous across the league for his blunt honesty, zero tolerance for coach speak, and refusal to sugarcoat bad news, took the podium. When pressed about whether Greenid would be ready for Week 1, the veteran coach didn't offer comforting reassurances. He didn't smile or promise a quick return. Instead, he shrugged off the question, admitted it was far too early to know, and casually dropped a bombshell. Greenid was going to miss a significant chunk of training camp. Think about the psychological whiplash of that moment. On one side, the front office insists there is nothing to see here. On the other side, the tactical genius running the defense is bracing for a long absence. That discrepancy sets off blaring siren alarms. The season opener looms large on September 13th. If Greenid is forced to miss the entire preparation period, we are looking at an absence stretching out to roughly 6 weeks. And when you look closer at his medical history, the anxiety turns into outright dread. Greenid is a phenomenal talent when he is on the field. He has proven he can wreck games, putting up 12.5 sacks with the Houston Texans and another 12 sacks in a dominant campaign with the Vikings. The talent has never been questioned. But durability, Durability is a ghost that has haunted his entire career. Just look at his recent past. Last season was an absolute grind plagued by lingering shoulder problems. He had to undergo surgery after managing only 3 sacks across 12 games while missing 5 crucial matchups due to that shoulder. Now he is dealing with a severe pectoral strain while trying to learn an entirely new defensive system under a demanding coordinator. Every single day he spends on the sideline is a day lost in absorbing complex playbooks, building chemistry with new teammates, and mastering the intricate nuances of the scheme. So what happens next? How does a defense absorb the loss of its most expensive, most vital pass rusher before training camp even hits its stride? But wait until you hear how this sudden absence completely wrecks the backup development plan and forces the coaching staff into an uncomfortable scramble. With Greenid sidelined, the dominoes began falling immediately. The original coaching blueprint had mapped out a very specific path for young talent. Jax Hunt was supposed to get heavy repetitions on the left side, while Greenid locked down the right. But with Greenid out of commission, Hunt was abruptly shoved into the right side edge rusher role, while Nolan Smith held down the left. This emergency pivot completely disrupts Hunt's intended development curve. Instead of easing into a specialized role, he is suddenly forced to carry an unnatural burden. Beyond them, the spotlight immediately intensifies on other rotational pieces. Names like A.J. Epineza and Arnold Ebiketie suddenly find themselves thrust into an expanded, high-pressure, second wave of pass rushers. Epineza, to his credit, arrived as a smart signing right after minicamp, and the coaching staff has already praised his quick ability to digest foreign concepts he had never tackled before in his career. Yet, despite these young players stepping up, a heavy shadow hangs over the facility. An old, familiar ghost hovers in the background, whispered about like an emergency insurance policy, the eternal Brandon Graham. When reporters recently asked the defensive coordinator about the possibility of bringing Graham back out of retirement, the coach offered a wry smile and joked that the decision was entirely at the mercy of the front office. The door hasn't been locked. The option remains dangling in the air. For a seasoned veteran like Graham, who no longer requires every grueling training camp practice to stay in peak physical condition, a late return wouldn't require a frantic rush. It is the ultimate safety net, a card the front office can slam down on the table if the defensive situation truly spirals out of control. But let's take a deep breath and look at the other side of the coin, because panic, while natural, might be entirely premature. First, a pectoral strain is a serious injury, but the medical staff maintains it is not a career-threatening or season-ending catastrophe. The PUP list during training camp is deliberately vague, designed to give teams flexibility, meaning a player can be activated at a moment's notice once clearance is granted. Second, the defensive roster possesses surprising depth. While losing a star hurts, the supporting cast of hungry players can hold down the fort long enough to keep the ship steady without the entire defense sinking. Third, we're talking about a seasoned veteran. Elite pass rushers of Greenid's caliber rarely play heavy snaps in the preseason anyway. From the opening day of camp to the September 13th kickoff, over 45 days remain on the calendar. That is an eternity in modern sports medicine. More than enough time for a dedicated professional to heal, condition, and step back onto the field if the recovery timeline stays on track. And finally, the mere psychological comfort of knowing Brandon Graham exists as an emergency fallback option gives both the coaching staff and the fan base a profound sense of security. The situation is undeniably tense, but it is far from a total disaster. Everything hinges on how Greenid's body responds over the critical weeks ahead. Human biology refuses to be rushed by front office deadlines or fan anxieties. The ultimate question remains hanging in the balance, heavy and unresolved. When you weigh the calm, measured optimism of the general manager against the blunt, unfiltered caution of the defensive coordinator, who do you really trust? Should the front office sound the alarm bells and dial up Brandon Graham right now just to be safe? Or is it wiser to trust the existing depth and wait patiently for the $100 million man to heal? And more importantly, If Greenwood isn't fully healthy by week 1, would you rather see him push through the pain and risk everything on the field, or sit out, recover properly, and return at absolute full strength later in the year?